Hello, fellow Star Wars police officers. Spoiler for those of you who have not seen the latest episode of The Bad Batch. But is Omega going to be a Jedi? For those of you who watched episode 9 of The Bad Batch, also please consider subscribing to the Star Wars Police Force if you haven't already done so. If you have, I appreciate it. We just reached 100 subscribers. So let's bump that up to the next one at 1,000. So for those of you who have watched episode 9, we were all hyped about the episode and we were pretty sure what was going to happen, but it was a great episode and it was probably one of my favorites. And this is why we have these great episodes, because it allows us to talk about what's going to happen in the future of the franchise and other stories. So before I begin, let me know in the comments below what you think is going to happen at the end of season 9. Now, we've had some hint for a while that Asajj Ventress was coming back. For those of you who read the Dark Disciple novel, we know that Asajj was killed at the end of the book, but that's a whole nother topic. Asajj is a Night Sister, and Night Sisters have the ability to perform resurrection techniques with their beautiful green magic. Now, in episode 8, we saw Omega and the Batch exploring what the Emperor was looking for in blood counts for these M counts. We saw the squad who basically worked for Fennec Shand as payment, who ultimately helped them on information on what these M counts actually were, because they have no idea. But at the end of this episode, we see Fennec Shand give information to an unknown figure who we basically all assumed was Asajj. At least I did anyway. And the key factor was that they completely mumbled it or void. Anyone who's familiar with episode 1, The Phantom Menace, knows that the M count is actually midichlorians, which is observed by Qui-Gon Jinn taking blood samples from Anakin when he was a slave on Tatooine. Now, in this episode, Asajj puts Omega through a series of tests. These could be considered either youngling tests or Padawan tests to test her Force sensitivity. And this all happens after a little bit of trust issues with the clones, which rightfully so, as Asajj was a Sith assassin during the Clone Wars. And after these tests were completed, it is very determined that Omega has abilities greater than the regular person, ironically being a part of the Bad Batch, which is a clone troop full of defects, that Omega is much more than a defect and that she might actually be perfect. So, spin-off series, The Perfect Batch. I'll sell it to Disney. Now, to conclude the remainder of the season, we know that the Empire is actively hunting Omega from her escape and that they want her blood for the M counts. Now, with Asajj's unexpected appearance, we know that the Bad Batch is not really safe and not as safe as they think they are. So what does this mean for the team in the Bad Batch? Now, is Omega going to be a Jedi? That might be crazy. Well, no, she's not going to be a Jedi, but we have to consider all the facts. Now, obviously, she most likely won't be a Jedi, and I'm air quoting, under Luke Skywalker's new academy. But down the road, who knows? But there has to be a climax at some point to the show, and we've been building up to this for quite a while. And the Harbinger, and the title of the episode, means to foreshadow. And Asajj is either coming to tell them a message that they are not safe where they are. We have seen Hunter and Crosshair of late struggle to keep Omega safe, and they stress about keeping her safe. And the other fact that we have to consider is Omega doesn't have the rapid aging gene, and she's actually the oldest on the squad. So I think to keep Omega safe and to let the Bad Batch rest and basically retire, they are going to do what's best for Omega and send her with Asajj. Now, Asajj is a former assassin of the Separatist army, and I guess like an acolyte or apprentice under Count Dooku, but we have to have a full understanding of Asajj's history to understand why Omega and Asajj would be a perfect match. Asajj wasn't always an evil Night Sister. Her family was forced into slavery when she was a young child, and she was eventually saved and observed by Jedi Master Narek, who took her unofficially and trained her as a Padawan until he was killed by pirates. So after her master died, she, was very frustrated, very upset, let her hate consume her, and she ended up trying to assassinate the warlord who killed her master. And she ended up being found by Count Dooku, who took her under her tutelage, basically made her a Sith assassin. Now, when she was betrayed by Dooku, again, this crushed her soul, crushed her spirit, crushed her will, and she went into a very dark place. Now, in the Dark Disciple novel, Asajj wanted revenge on her former master and ended up teaming with Quinlan Vos. And as they were working together, they ended up falling in love and sharing each other's experiences and cultures. And this is where we learned that Asajj was really misunderstood the whole time. And at the end of the novel, and again, spoilers ahead, Asajj sacrificed herself to save Quinlan Vos and ultimately gave up her life to protect the one that she loved. And then at the conclusion of the story, her body was placed back into the green waters of Dathomir, where all the beautiful green magic happened. Now we see her back in the Bad Batch. So obviously she's alive. This is the George Lucas rule. there are no rules in space. Now, you notice her yellow lightsaber, her history and her affinity for the dark side and the light side. Asajj is a complete unit of the Force. She is aware of the whole thing, and I think that she is going to be a perfect match for Omega to teach her in the ways of the Force. Now, I truly believe that the story is going to end with the death or sacrifice of the Bad Batch to save Omega. I think that they are going to leave the planet they're on now, and that they are going to somehow get caught up with the Empire or the Emperor himself, and the Bad Batch crew is going to either be killed and they are going to be saved by Asajj and Fennec, and that she will be forced to leave with them as Omega watches her crewmates either die or sacrifice themselves to get her to safety, because that's all they really care about, is saving Omega, keeping Omega safe. And that's been very clear the whole time. With Omega and Asajj being a partner in the future, I think that Asajj is going to train Omega to be a Jedi. And I think the spin-off series is going to be of Omega and Asajj and their escapades throughout the galaxy. Now, this could create a whole new possibility of storyline. Obviously, Asajj is familiar with Fennec Shand and that they have some sort of a relationship. And we see in the future, we see the Book of Boba Fett working with Fennec Shand. And Fennec Shand was an assassin, but she was ultimately killed and saved by Boba Fett, and now she's under his tutelage. So we could potentially see a new spin-off of the Book of Boba Fett, whether that be an animated series or another live action. We could have some sort of Omega Asajj future episode with a reconnection of Book of Boba Fett. Could be crazy, could be wild, but that's what I'm going to go with. So let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Is this the future of Omega to be the next spin-off series, her training as a Force user and, basically doing her own Cal Kestis style, taking down the Empire? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll catch you guys next week.